when shapeshifters couldn't copy human nature. The silence from Kepler 442c had stretched for 47 days. Captain Jack Rodriguez stared at the tactical display as the UES Phantom dropped out of hyperspace, the blue-white star of the Kepler system burning against the void. 3 colonies, nearly 100,000 souls, all gone quiet without so much as a distress ping. Sensor sweep complete, Captain. Lieutenant Emma Chen's fingers danced across her console, her pale face illuminated by scrolling data streams. Colony Prime is active, life signs nominal, infrastructure functional. Rodriguez's jaw tightened. In 20 years of military service, from the brutal ground campaigns on Proxima Centauri to hunting pirates in the Veil Nebula, he'd learned to trust the itch between his shoulder blades. Right now, it was screaming. Define nominal, Ghost. Chen paused, stylus hovering over her tablet. The intelligence officer had earned her call sign by moving through data like a wraith through shadows, seeing patterns others missed, connections that shouldn't exist. 17,000 colonists going about their daily routines, agricultural zones operational, transport networks running on schedule. Her dark eyes met his. But no response to any communication attempt. They're ignoring us. Ignoring, Master Sergeant Tony, Bulldog, Kowalski's gravelly voice carried across the bridge from his weapons station. The veteran Marine's scarred hands never left his controls. 44 years old, with 3 decades of keeping people alive in places where everything wanted them dead. Or can't respond. Dr. Lisa Park looked up from her xenobiology station, adjusting wire-rimmed glasses that had seen better decades. The medical scanners are interesting. Everyone appears healthy. Vital signs within normal human parameters, but the neural activity patterns. She frowned, stylus tapping against her lower lip. There's something uniform about them. Too uniform. Rodriguez felt that familiar cold weight settling in his chest, the same sensation he'd experienced in the Titan massacre, when they'd found the research station filled with corpses that hadn't stopped smiling. Elaborate, Doc. Human brainwave patterns are chaotic by nature. Individual, even identical twins show distinct neural signatures. Park's voice carried the measured cadence of someone translating complex science for simpler minds. But these readings, they're like variations on a theme rather than unique compositions. The bridge fell silent except for the soft hum of life support and the distant whisper of hyperspace engines cycling down. Rodriguez studied the main display, watching thermal signatures move through the colony streets in patterns that looked perfectly normal. Too perfectly normal. Bulldog prep a landing party. Light arms, full recording gear. Ghost, I want every sensor we have focused on that colony. If someone down there hiccups in a way that doesn't match the pattern, I want to know about it. Sir? Chen's fingers flew across her console. Something else. I've been analyzing the communication logs from before they went silent. The last transmissions show a gradual shift in language patterns. Subtle at first, formal where they used to be casual, responses that are technically correct but, she paused, searching for words, emotionally flat. Rodriguez nodded grimly. 23 years in intelligence had taught him that the devil lived in such details. Like someone reading from a script they don't quite understand. Exactly. The Phantom settled into a high orbit, her stealth systems engaged. Rodriguez watched the colony through the viewscreen, neat rows of habitat domes, agricultural sectors that hummed with activity, transport tubes carrying their human cargo in predictable patterns. It looked like paradise. It felt like a trap. The shuttle Wraith descended through Kepler 442c's thin atmosphere like a falling shadow. Rodriguez sat in the pilot's seat, his hands steady on the controls despite the adrenaline singing in his veins. Behind him, the landing party checked their gear with the quiet efficiency of professionals who'd done this dance too many times. Remember, Rodriguez said over the comm, we're a routine inspection team. Friendly, concerned, Keep your weapons concealed but ready. Park adjusted her medical scanner, the device humming softly as it calibrated. Captain, I'm picking up detailed biometric data now. The colonists register as completely, perfectly human. DNA, cellular structure, metabolic processes, everything matches baseline Terran physiology. That should be reassuring, Chen muttered, checking her sidearm for the third time. Should be, Kowalski agreed, his combat reflexes making him scan the approaching landing pad for threats that weren't there. But it ain't. The shuttle touched down with barely a whisper. Through the viewports, Rodriguez could see colonists going about their business loading cargo, tending gardens, walking with purposeful strides toward destinations that made sense. Everything normal, everything wrong. They disembarked into artificial sunlight that felt real enough to trick skin and eyes, but somehow failed to warm the soul. The air tasted of recycled atmosphere and growing things, tinged with the metallic aftertaste common to terraformed worlds. Welcome to Colony Prime. The greeting came from a middle-aged woman in administrator's coveralls, her smile perfect and her eyes empty. I'm Sarah Chen, Colony Director. We weren't expecting an inspection team. Rodriguez felt his blood chill. Ghost's real name was Emma Chen, and according to the personnel files he'd memorized, she had an aunt named Sarah who'd volunteered for the Kepler 442C colonial mission 2 years ago. He glanced at Ghost, saw her face go pale beneath her tactical helmet. Her aunt stood 3 meters away, breathing and smiling and completely failing to recognize her own niece. Routine check-in, Rodriguez said smoothly, extending his hand. Captain Rodriguez, UES Phantom, we've been trying to reach you for weeks. Sarah's handshake was firm, warm, technically perfect. But her grip duration was exactly 3 seconds regulation, greeting protocol from a manual, rather than the unconscious social dance of human interaction. Our communication array has been experiencing intermittent failures, she said with that same empty smile. We've been meaning to file a repair request. Kowalski moved closer to Ghost, his warrior's instincts reading the tension in her posture. Park was scanning everything with her medical sensor, her expression growing more troubled with each reading. Sarah, Ghost said quietly, removing her helmet. Her dark hair spilled free, framing features that shared obvious genetic markers with the woman before them. Don't you recognize me? The thing wearing Sarah Chen's face studied Ghost with polite interest but no hint of recognition. Should I? You have an honest face, Lieutenant. Very trustworthy. Rodriguez saw Ghost flinch as if slapped. He stepped forward, military authority wrapping around him like armor. We'd like to conduct a full inspection of the colony facilities. Standard protocol following a communication blackout. Of course, Sarah said, her smile never wavering. Though I assure you everything is perfectly normal here. We're all very happy. As they walked through the colony streets, Rodriguez felt the wrongness settling deeper into his bones. People waved and smiled at the inspection team, but their greetings felt rehearsed. A father pushed his daughter on a swing set, but the girl's laughter sounded like an audio file played on loop. 2 lovers held hands while staring in opposite directions, their romance performed rather than felt. Park's scanner chirped constantly, feeding her data that made no sense. Captain, she whispered, I'm reading human genetics, human physiology, human biochemistry, but the neural patterns, it's like they're all running the same basic operating system with different cosmetic interfaces. Meaning these aren't people anymore. Her voice carried the weight of a terrible realization. They're echoes, perfect physical copies without the chaos that makes us human. Rodriguez felt pieces clicking into place, the uniform brainwave patterns, the lack of individual quirks, the way everyone moved like actors who'd memorized their blocking but not their motivation. Ghost, run a full spectrum analysis on our hosts. I want to know what we're really dealing with. Chen's fingers moved across her scanner, invisible light playing over the colonists as they went about their eerily normal routines. Biosignatures are fluid. Cellular structure shows signs of controlled metamorphosis. Captain, I don't think these are human beings at all. A child ran past, chasing a ball with mechanical precision. Her laugh was pitch-perfect, her smile exactly what a computer might generate when tasked with creating innocent joy. But her eyes held the depth of a painted portrait, technically accurate, fundamentally empty. Then what are they? Rodriguez asked, though he was beginning to suspect he already knew. His answer came from behind them, in a voice that carried the liquid smoothness of something pretending to be human. We are what you will become, Captain Rodriguez. We are evolution perfected. They turned to see Sarah Chen's form rippling, her features flowing like mercury before resolving into something else entirely. A humanoid figure of living silver, constantly shifting and reforming, maintaining cohesion through will alone. We are the Metamorphs, the creature continued, its voice now carrying harmonics no human throat could produce. And you are about to join us. Rodriguez drew his sidearm in one smooth motion, muscle memory overriding shock. Around them, the perfect colonists began to change, their human masks dissolving to reveal the predators beneath. The hunt was about to begin. The silver being that had worn Sarah Chen's face like a discarded mask rippled in the artificial sunlight, its form a study in controlled chaos. Where humans possessed the rigid architecture of bone and sinew, this creature flowed, each movement a testament to evolutionary perfection that had transcended the limitations of fixed biology. Your species fascinates us, it said, voice harmonizing with itself in impossible octaves. So rigid, so permanent, yet you've achieved remarkable things despite your evolutionary dead end. Rodriguez kept his weapon trained on the creature's center mass, though he suspected bullets would prove as effective as angry words against living mercury. Around them, the false colonists continued their grotesque pantomime of human normalcy, a child still chasing her ball, lovers still holding hands, workers still going about their tasks. The only difference was the wrongness that now radiated from them like heat from a forge. Dead end. Dr. Park stepped closer, her scientific curiosity warring with survival instincts. We've colonized 47 star systems in less than 2 centuries. The Metamorph's form solidified into something resembling Sarah Chen again, but the details were off: eyes too symmetrical, smile too perfect, skin that reflected light like polished metal. Impressive, yes, but you remain trapped in your birth forms, unable to adapt, unable to truly evolve. We adapt just fine, Kowalski growled, his rifle sweeping across the crowd of false humans. The Marine's weathered face showed no fear, only the cold calculation of a predator assessing other predators. We're here, ain't we? Technology, the creature dismissed with a wave that somehow involved its entire torso. External modifications to compensate for biological limitations. We are adaptation itself. Watch. The thing flowed again, this time taking Kowalski's exact form: scars, weathered skin, even the slight limp from shrapnel on Titan. It studied its copied hands with Sarah Chen's voice emerging from Tony Kowalski's face. 44 years of combat experience. 3 decades of survival in hostile environments. We are all of this now, and more. Rodriguez felt his stomach lurch. The mimicry was perfect down to the microscopic level. Park's scanner showed identical DNA patterns, identical cellular structure, identical everything. Yet something fundamental was missing, some essential spark that marked the difference between original and copy. Impressive, he admitted, never lowering his weapon, but you missed something important. The false Kowalski tilted its head with mechanical precision. Impossible. Our replication is flawless. We have copied millions of species across thousands of worlds. We are. You're a fucking robot, the real Kowalski interrupted with a bark of laughter that held no humor. Got the moves right, got the looks right, but you stand like you're on parade, not like someone who's had his guts rearranged by alien artillery. The creature's form wavered, confusion rippling across its stolen features. Clarify this assessment. Rodriguez smiled grimly. Show it, Bulldog. Kowalski shifted his weight, unconsciously favoring his left side where titanian crystal shards had torn through muscle and bone. The movement was subtle, an accommodation so deeply ingrained it had become part of his cellular memory. The false Kowalski stood perfectly balanced, biomechanically ideal, completely wrong. Pain changes us, Dr. Park said softly, understanding flooding her voice. Not just physically, but neurologically. Every injury, every trauma, every adaptation becomes part of our movement patterns, our reflexes, our unconscious responses. You copied the damage, but not the adjustment. The metamorph flowed back into its neutral silver form, features becoming fluid and uncertain. This is irrelevant, minor calibration errors that can be corrected with additional observation. Is it? Ghost stepped forward, removing her helmet completely. Her dark hair caught the artificial sunlight as she studied the creature with intelligence officers' eyes cataloging weaknesses, identifying failure points. How long did you observe Sarah Chen before you replaced her? Observation cycles varied based on subject complexity. Your Sarah Chen required 47 rotations of detailed study before replication parameters were optimized. 47 days. Ghost's voice carried a weight that made Rodriguez's chest tighten. You watched my aunt for 47 days, learned her routines, her speech patterns, her physical mannerisms. Then you killed her and wore her life like a costume. The creature's form solidified again, attempting Sarah Chen's appearance with renewed precision. But the anger in Ghost's voice seemed to disturb its focus. The face kept slipping, features flowing like wax in a flame. Termination was necessary for complete integration. Your species' attachment to individual identity units creates inefficiency. We eliminate such limitations. Rodriguez saw Ghost's jaw clench, saw her hand drift toward her sidearm. The kid was professional, but she was also human, and humans had breaking points that no amount of training could completely suppress. Emma, her aunt's stolen voice carried false warmth, programmed concern. You seem distressed. Perhaps you should. The gunshot echoed across the false colony like thunder. Ghost's sidearm had cleared leather and fired before the creature could finish its sentence, plasma bolt burning a hole clean through its center mass. Molten silver splattered across the ground, hissing where it contacted soil. For a heartbeat, Rodriguez thought they'd won. Then the creature flowed back together, healing itself with the casual ease of water finding its level. Fascinating, it said, studying the still glowing hole in its torso as it sealed. Your emotional responses create unpredictable tactical choices. We must factor this into future replication attempts. Future attempts. Rodriguez kept his weapon steady despite the cold certainty settling in his gut. You're planning to replace us too. Replace? No. The Metamorph's voice carried something that might have been amusement. You are too complex for simple replacement. Your captain unit demonstrates leadership matrices that resist standard infiltration protocols. Your doctor unit shows cognitive flexibility that defies behavioral prediction. Your warrior unit exhibits irrationality that creates tactical advantages. Your intelligence unit. It paused, silver features flowing as it studied Ghost with renewed interest. Your intelligence unit just demonstrated emotional override of logical function. This should create vulnerability, yet instead enables unpredictable capabilities. Rodriguez felt pieces clicking together, not just the threat they faced, but the larger picture. How many worlds have you conquered this way? Conquered is incorrect terminology. We improve, we optimize, we replace inferior fixed-form species with superior adaptive variants. The creature's form began to shift again, cycling through different human shapes like a living database of stolen lives. 47 successful planetary integrations. 0 resistance beyond initial contact phases. Because no one figured out what you were doing in time, Dr. Park breathed, her scanner painting her pale face with reflected light. You study, copy, replace, repeat. A perfect system for perfect predators. Until now, Rodriguez said quietly. The metamorph cycling stopped, features resolving into something that might have been its natural state, humanoid but clearly alien, silver skin reflecting light in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Explain this assessment. Rodriguez smiled, the expression cold as vacuum. You've spent 47 days studying humans. We've spent our entire species' existence studying how to kill things that want to kill us. Guess which skill set is more relevant right now? Around them, the false colonists began to move with new purpose. No longer maintaining their human charade, they flowed toward the landing party with predatory grace. But Rodriguez had fought in places where the enemy could be anyone, anything, anywhere. He'd learned to trust instincts over evidence, gut feeling over sensor data. Bulldog, Ghost establish overlapping fields of fire. Doc, stay between us and maintain continuous scans. I want to know the moment these things try to get clever. Sir, Ghost said, her voice steady despite the grief Rodriguez could hear beneath the professional veneer. What's the plan? Rodriguez chambered around in his backup weapon, the mechanical sound sharp in the artificial air. Simple. We're going to teach these perfect predators that sometimes being imperfect is exactly what you need to survive. The silver beings flowed closer, confidence radiating from their liquid forms. They had conquered 47 worlds with patient observation and flawless mimicry. They were evolution's ultimate expression, adaptable, indestructible, unstoppable. They had never encountered humans who knew they were coming. Rodriguez felt the familiar calm descend, the zone where training became instinct, where thought became action, where survival depended on being exactly what these creatures couldn't understand or predict. Human. Contact in 30 seconds, Ghost reported, her scanner painting targeting data across Rodriguez's tactical display. I count 47 distinct entities converging on our position. Poetic, Kowalski muttered, checking his ammunition count. 1 for each world they've murdered. Rodriguez keyed his comm to the Phantom, knowing the signal would reach Lieutenant Commander Sarah Kim on the bridge. Overwatch, this is Ground Team Actual. Code Black. Initiate Prometheus Protocol. Full sterilization contingency authorized. Kim's voice crackled back, tight with professional concern. Confirmed, Ground Team. Prometheus standing by. What's your extraction timeline? Rodriguez watched the silver tide flowing toward them, dozens of perfect predators moving with inhuman coordination. In the distance, he could see more emerging from buildings, rising from storm drains, materializing from shadows where they'd been waiting, watching, learning. Unknown at this time, Overwatch. Maintain orbital position and await my signal, if we don't report in within the hour. He let the implication hang in the recycled air. Everyone knew what Prometheus Protocol meant: orbital bombardment sufficient to sterilize a continent. The Phantom carried enough firepower to turn Colony Prime into a crater that would glow for centuries. Understood, Ground Team. Gods go with you. The comm channel closed with a soft click, leaving them alone with the approaching nightmare. Rodriguez felt the weight of command settle on his shoulders, not just for his team, but for every human colony in the galaxy. If these creatures learned to replicate humanity perfectly, if they figured out the missing pieces that made their mimicry fall short. They're beautiful, Dr. Park whispered, her scientific mind cataloging details even as survival instincts screamed warnings. Perfect biological efficiency. No wasted energy, no redundant systems, no evolutionary baggage. They're what we might have become if we'd evolved for pure adaptation instead of being human, Rodriguez finished. Which is exactly why we're going to kick their silver asses all the way back to whatever hole they crawled out of. The first metamorph reached engagement range, its form cycling between different human shapes like a broken hologram. Rodriguez centered his sights and squeezed the trigger, watching plasma tear through silver flesh that flowed and reformed even as it burned. "Remember," he called over the sound of gunfire as his team opened up in synchronized volleys, "they can copy our forms, our voices, our mannerisms, but they can't copy what makes us human. Use that." Kowalski's rifle chattered in controlled bursts, each shot precisely placed despite the fact that conventional tactics seemed useless against enemies that healed faster than they could be damaged. "What exactly makes us human, sir?" Rodriguez smiled grimly as he watched Ghost improvise a flanking maneuver that no textbook had ever taught, saw Park use her medical scanner as an improvised weapon, witnessed Kowalski adapt his firing pattern in real time to exploit weaknesses he was discovering through pure intuition. Chaos Bulldog. Beautiful, unpredictable, absolutely human chaos. The battle for humanity's future had begun. The plasma fire cut silver ribbons through artificial air, each shot precise as prayer and twice as desperate. Rodriguez rolled behind a fabricated planter as molten metamorph splashed against permacrete, the creature's scream harmonizing with itself in frequencies that made his teeth ache. "They're learning our patterns," Ghost's voice cracked over the comm, her position marked by muzzle flashes from behind an overturned transport cart. 3 seconds between shots, textbook covering fire, exactly what the enemy was starting to anticipate. Rodriguez watched a metamorph flow around Kowalski's, suppressing fire like liquid mercury, its form shifting mid-stride from humanoid to something resembling a metallic spider. Beautiful, terrifying, completely logical. And that was the problem. "Cease fire," the order cut through combat chaos like a blade through silk. "All units, weapons down." "Sir?" Kowalski's voice carried the bewilderment of a veteran who'd never heard such an order in active combat. His rifle remained trained on a silver creature that had frozen mid-approach, confusion rippling across its flowing features. Rodriguez stood slowly, hands visible but ready. Around them, dozens of metamorphs paused their advance, perfect predators suddenly uncertain why their prey had stopped running. The silence stretched like a held breath. "You're studying us," Rodriguez called to the prime mimic, which had maintained Sarah Chen's appearance despite the battle raging around it. Every shot, every movement, every tactical decision, building a database of human combat responses. The creature's stolen features showed interest rather than triumph. "Correct. Your species demonstrates remarkable tactical flexibility within established parameters. We are cataloging these patterns for future integration." Rodriguez smiled, not the grim expression of a soldier under fire, but something warmer, more human. "Then let me show you something that won't fit in your database." He holstered his sidearm and began to juggle. The motion was fluid, practiced 3 spent plasma cells dancing through recycled air in an arc that served no tactical purpose, accomplished no military objective, created no strategic advantage. It was pure human nonsense. The metamorphs froze completely. "Captain," Dr. Park's voice carried scientific fascination mixed with tactical confusion. "What are you?" "Being unpredictable," Rodriguez replied, never breaking rhythm. "Something our silver friends here have never encountered. They've conquered 47 worlds by studying and replicating logical behavior patterns. But humans," he caught all 3 cells in one hand, "we're not always logical." Ghost's laughter bubbled up from her position, bright and sharp as breaking crystal. "You want unpredictable. Watch this." She began to sing. Not a battle hymn or motivational anthem, but something achingly beautiful, an old Earth ballad her grandmother had taught her, words in Mandarin that painted pictures of autumn leaves and distant lovers. Her voice soared over the false colony, transforming a battlefield into something approaching art. The Metamorphs' forms began to waver, silver skin rippling with what might have been confusion. Their prime spoke with Sarah Chen's voice wrapped around alien harmonics. This behavior serves no survival function. It provides no tactical advantage. It is inefficient. Exactly, Kowalski grinned, then did something that would have gotten him court-martialed in any sane military engagement. He began to dance. Not well, mind you. The scarred veteran moved like mechanical parts forced into organic motion, but with such obvious joy that even the approaching metamorphs paused to watch. "Doc," Rodriguez called, "care to contribute to our impromptu performance?" Dr. Park's eyes lit with understanding. She activated her medical scanner and began conducting with it like a baton, creating a symphony of electronic beeps and chirps that somehow harmonized with Ghost's singing. Her movements were precise, scientific, completely at odds with the chaos around them. The metamorphs had stopped advancing entirely. Their prime flowed closer, fascination warring with predatory instinct. "We do not understand. Your survival probability decreases with each moment of this irrational behavior. Why do you persist?" Rodriguez caught Ghost's eye and winked. "Because that's what makes us human. We don't always do what makes sense. Sometimes we do what makes us feel alive." He drew his sidearm in one fluid motion and fired not at the prime mimic, but at the artificial sun blazing overhead. The plasma bolt shattered the illumination system in a shower of sparks and shattered ceramics, plunging the colony into the alien twilight of Kepler 442c's natural light. In the suddenly shifting shadows, the battle resumed, but now it followed no pattern the metamorphs could anticipate. Ghost abandoned her covering position to sprint directly toward a cluster of silver beings, leaping over their reaching appendages to land on a fabricated roof. Her movements were tactically unsound, strategically questionable, and utterly effective because they made no sense. Kowalski charged the largest metamorph while screaming what sounded like obscenities in 3 different languages, his rifle firing in rhythms that matched his grandmother's polka records. The creature tried to flow away from his advance, but couldn't predict which direction he'd choose because Kowalski himself didn't know. Dr. Park used her scanner like a weapon, but not by striking. Instead, she programmed it to emit electromagnetic pulses in sequences that formed musical patterns. The metamorphs, accustomed to logical electronic signals, found their own bioelectric systems disrupted by Box-Goldberg variations translated into M spectrum. "This is impossible." The prime mimic's voice lost its harmonic perfection, becoming shrill with something that might have been panic. "Combat behavior follows established patterns. Survival instincts create predictable responses." Rodriguez rolled behind cover that left him more exposed than his previous position, reloaded his weapon with unnecessary flourish, and began firing at targets he couldn't see, letting instinct and peripheral vision guide his shots, while his conscious mind recited poetry his mother had taught him. "You're right," he called between verses of Robert Frost. "It is impossible. That's why it works." A metamorph flowed around his cover, its form cycling through different human shapes as it tried to determine the optimal approach for dealing with irrational prey. Rodriguez met its rush by doing something no tactical manual had ever suggested. He hugged it. The creature's silver form writhed against him, confusion evident in every ripple. Physical contact was how it learned, how it copied, how it integrated new biological templates. But Rodriguez wasn't trying to fight or flee. He was just embracing an enemy that had no protocol for dealing with inappropriate affection. "Human behavior is not bound by survival logic," he whispered to the struggling creature. "We create art in the face of death. We sing when we should run. We dance when we should hide. We love when we should hate. That's not a weakness, it's our greatest strength. The metamorph struggles weakened, its form becoming less cohesive. We do not understand this input. Physical contact suggests integration attempt, but your neural patterns indicate affection. This is contradictory. Welcome to humanity, Rodriguez said gently, then activated the plasma grenade clipped to his belt. The explosion vaporized both of them, or should have. Rodriguez found himself stumbling backward, somehow unharmed, while the metamorphs remained splattered across the nearby buildings in silver droplets that hissed and steamed. Captain, Dr. Park's scanner painted him in diagnostic light. How are you still alive? That detonation should have. Plasma grenade, Rodriguez grinned, showing her the obviously fake device he'd been carrying. Emergency flare with a modified housing. Looks dangerous, sounds impressive, completely harmless to anyone more than 3 feet away. Ghost's voice carried delighted laughter. A bluff. A performance, Rodriguez corrected. The metamorph was so busy trying to analyze my irrational behavior that it never questioned whether my weapon was real. Around them, the battle was turning. The remaining metamorphs moved with increasing uncertainty, their perfect coordination breaking down as they tried to counter tactics that had no logical foundation. They flowed and shifted and adapted, but adaptation required understanding, and human chaos defied comprehension. The prime mimic stood in the center of the carnage, its Sarah Chen disguise flickering like a broken hologram. This is not how conquest proceeds. Species follow predictable patterns. Resistance diminishes over time. Order emerges from chaos. Not with us, Rodriguez said, walking toward the creature with casual confidence. We've been disappointing expectations since we first looked up at the stars and decided they weren't far enough away. Kowalski appeared beside him, rifle casually slung but ready. Sir, I count 12 hostiles neutralized, 15 more retreating to secondary positions. Whatever we're doing, it's working. It's working because it doesn't work, Ghost added, materializing from shadows with the practiced ease of someone who'd learned to move through data like smoke. Every time they adapt to our tactics, we change them, not to more effective tactics, to different ones. Dr. Park approached with her scanner painting the air in diagnostic colors. The remaining metamorphs are showing signs of what I can only describe as neurological distress. Their bioelectric patterns are becoming increasingly chaotic. They're trying to learn chaos, Rodriguez realized. But chaos can't be learned, only experienced, and they're too perfect to experience it properly. The prime mimic's form began to lose cohesion, silver skin rippling with what might have been distress. We have conquered 47 worlds. Our methodology is proven. Our adaptation is superior. We are evolution perfected. You're copycats, Rodriguez said simply. Perfect ones, I'll grant you, but copying isn't creating. Adapting isn't innovating. You can become anything you observe, but you can't become something that doesn't exist yet. He gestured to his team, Ghost humming off-key, while maintaining perfect tactical awareness. Kowalski performing maintenance on his rifle with dance-like precision. Dr. Park taking readings while composing what appeared to be a haiku about xenobiology. This is what you can't replicate. Not just human behavior, but human possibility. The capacity to become something new in every moment, to surprise ourselves as much as our enemies. The prime mimic's voice carried harmonics of confusion, frustration, something that might have been fear. We require time to analyze these new parameters, to develop counter-strategies, to adapt. Rodriguez smiled, warm, human, impossibly confident. Take all the time you need. We'll be here being impossible. The metamorph flowed backward, its form becoming less stable with each passing moment. Around the colony, its followers began to withdraw, not in organized retreat, but in something approaching panic. Perfect predators encountering prey they couldn't understand, couldn't predict, couldn't become. Captain, Ghost said quietly. What happens when they do figure us out? When they learn to replicate chaos? Rodriguez watched the silver tide recede, leaving behind the bones of a murdered colony and the promise of greater conflicts to come. Then we'll have to become something they haven't seen yet. He keyed his comm to the Phantom, his voice carrying across vacuum to the ship waiting in high orbit. Overwatch, this is Ground Team Actual. Colony Prime is secure. Beginning detailed reconnaissance. Maintain Prometheus Protocol authorization. We're not done here yet. In the alien twilight of Kepler 442c, surrounded by the evidence of humanity's strangest victory, Rodriguez felt something he hadn't experienced in decades of military service: curiosity about what would happen next. The Metamorphs thought they were perfect predators. Time to show them what imperfect prey could accomplish when pushed to the edge of impossible. The real battle was just beginning. The Phantom's briefing room had seen its share of impossible mission parameters, but the silence that followed Rodriguez's report carried weight beyond mere tactical complexity. On the main display, footage from Colony Prime played in slow motion, silver beings flowing like liquid mercury, human forms dissolving and reforming, the eerie dance of predators learning to fear their prey. Let me understand this correctly. Admiral Sarah Kim leaned forward in her command chair, steel-gray hair catching the harsh light of status displays. You defeated shapeshifting aliens by juggling. Rodriguez's weathered face cracked the smallest smile. Among other things, the key insight, Admiral, is that the Metamorphs approach every situation with perfect logic. They study, analyze, categorize, then replicate. But human behavior, real human behavior, includes elements that resist logical analysis. Dr. Park touched her tablet, bringing up neurological scans that painted the air in blues and golds. Their cognitive architecture is fascinating. Incredibly sophisticated pattern recognition, flawless biological mimicry, near-instantaneous adaptation. But they have no framework for processing genuine irrationality. Because they've never needed one, Ghost added from her position at the intelligence console. Dark circles under her eyes spoke to sleepless nights spent analyzing metamorph behavioral patterns. Every species they've encountered follows predictable survival protocols. Fight, flee, negotiate, surrender, all logical responses that can be modeled and countered. Kowalski's scarred hands worked methodically over his rifle, the weapon field-stripped across the conference table in precise components. Like fighting a computer that's never heard of Murphy's Law. Admiral Kim studied the tactical projections with the focused intensity that had kept her alive through 3 major conflicts. The larger strategic picture concerns me, Captain. You mentioned 47 conquered worlds. If the Metamorphs are expanding. They were, Rodriguez corrected. Past tense, something changed after our encounter. The display shifted to long-range sensor data, energy signatures, communication intercepts, stellar cartography marked with the red icons of dead civilizations. But the pattern showed something unexpected. Cessation of expansion activity, withdrawal from forward positions, communications traffic that suggested internal debate rather than coordinated conquest. They're having philosophical difficulties, Dr. Park said, with the satisfaction of a scientist watching theory become reality. We didn't just defeat their tactical approach, we challenged their fundamental worldview. Rodriguez nodded, remembering silver forms wavering with something approaching uncertainty. The prime mimic called us an evolutionary dead end because we can't shapeshift, but when we proved that mental adaptation trumps physical transformation, we made them question everything they believe about evolution itself, Ghost finished. The briefing room's hatch chimed, admitting Lieutenant Commander Torres from Zeno Communications. The young officer's olive complexion showed the pallor of someone who'd spent too many hours monitoring impossible signals. Admiral, we're receiving transmissions from the Metamorph fleet. The linguistic algorithms are struggling. The messages contain contradictions, philosophical debates, what appears to be factional disagreement. Kim's eyebrows rose. Internal conflict. More than that, Tors said, consulting his tablet with shaking hands. Some of them want to learn from us rather than replace us. They're calling it the new adaptation, using their shape-shifting abilities for cooperation instead of conquest. Rodriguez felt something cold settle in his chest. Show me. The display filled with translated text, alien concepts forced into human language through mathematical approximation. The messages spoke of division within metamorph society, ancient mimics clinging to traditional conquest methods, younger flux seekers proposing revolutionary new approaches to interspecies relations. They want to meet, Tors continued, not to study and replace but to exchange ideas, cultural adaptation instead of biological integration. It could be a trap, Kowalski observed, his soldiers' paranoia never far from the surface. These things are professional deceivers. Could be, Rodriguez agreed. But consider the alternative. If we refuse contact, they might decide their traditional methods work better. 47 dead worlds Tors. If there's a chance for something different. Admiral Kim stood, her decision crystallizing with command authority. We meet them. But on our terms, our location, our protocols. Captain Rodriguez, I'm assigning you as primary contact. Your team has more experience with metamorph psychology than anyone else in the fleet. Admiral, Dr. Park interjected, there are significant risks, even friendly contact with a species that replicates through physical touch. Could go catastrophically wrong, Kim finished. I'm aware, but the potential rewards. She gestured to the star charts, the red markers of conquered worlds, the vast unknown of space that held countless more civilizations. If we can turn the galaxy's most effective predators into allies, the strategic implications are staggering. Rodriguez studied the communication intercepts, reading between alien lines for signs of deception or genuine change. 23 years in intelligence had taught him to trust nothing and question everything. But something in the Metamorphs' transmissions resonated with his own experience of transformation, the way impossible situations forced people to become more than they'd thought possible. There's something else, he said quietly. During the battle when that metamorph made contact with me, for just a moment I felt what it was like to be them. The constant shifting, the hunger for new forms, the loneliness of being able to become anyone but never being yourself. Ghost looked up from her console, concern evident in her dark eyes. Captain, that level of neural interface could be dangerous, if they can access your memories. They can, but I hope, the exchange went both ways. Rodriguez met Admiral Kim's gaze, command decision reflecting command decision. I may have given them something they've never had before, the experience of being genuinely, chaotically, impossibly human. The briefing room fell silent except for the soft hum of life support and the distant whisper of hyperspace engines. Outside the viewports, stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, indifferent to the species that lived and died in their light. Very well, Admiral Kim said finally. Set up the meeting. Neutral space, full precautions, diplomatic immunity for both sides. But Captain, her voice carried the weight of command and the warmth of personal concern. If this goes wrong, if they're playing some larger game we don't understand, then we'll improvise something new, Rodriguez replied with quiet confidence. It's what we do. 3 days later, the neutral meeting point sparkled with artificial aurora as two fleets faced each other across the void. The Phantom held position at the center of Earth's diplomatic formation, destroyers and cruisers arranged in patterns that suggested both strength and restraint. Across several million kilometers of empty space, metamorph vessels hung like silver tears against the cosmic dark. Rodriguez stood in the Phantom's cargo bay, watching the approaching shuttle through reinforced viewports. The metamorph craft moved with liquid grace, its hull flowing and reforming as it navigated the docking approach. Beautiful, alien, possibly the most dangerous thing humanity had ever encountered. Contact in 30 seconds, Ghost reported from her monitoring station. Biosigns are unusual. I'm reading multiple distinct metamorph entities, but their neural patterns are more complex than what we encountered at Colony Prime. Dr. Park checked her medical scanners for the dozenth time, each device calibrated to detect the slightest sign of infiltration attempt. Remember, no physical contact without explicit consent. Maintain minimum safe distance. If anyone starts behaving unusually. We improvise, Kowalski finished, his hands resting casually near weapons that everyone hoped would remain holstered. The shuttle docked with barely a whisper, magnetic clamps engaging with the solid thunk of metal meeting metal. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the airlock cycled, atmospheric sensors confirmed breathable environment, and the hatch opened. 3 beings flowed into the cargo bay, their forms settling into shapes that were recognizably humanoid but clearly not human. Silver skin reflected the harsh lighting in patterns that suggested constant internal movement. Features that were beautiful in an abstract, mathematical way, too perfect to be natural, too alien to be comfortable. The largest spoke with a voice like wind chimes in a hurricane. I am Fluxseeker Prime, chosen to speak for those who would learn your ways. With me are Echo of Change and Ripple Thought, scholars of adaptation theory. Rodriguez stepped forward, close enough to show respect but far enough to maintain tactical advantage. Captain Jack Rodriguez, representing Earth's diplomatic corps, thank you for coming. Gratitude is irrelevant, the being identified as Echo of Change interrupted, its form more angular than its companions. We require understanding. Your species has demonstrated capabilities that challenge fundamental principles of evolutionary success. You beat us, Ripplethought added with what might have been admiration. 47 worlds conquered through perfect replication, and you defeated us with chaos theory applied to combat methodology. Rodriguez smiled, carefully human, genuinely warm. We prefer to think of it as creative problem-solving. Fluxseeker Prime's form rippled with patterns that suggested deep thought. This creativity, you demonstrate, it appears to involve generating novel solutions without reference to established optimal patterns. Our analysis suggests this should produce inferior results, yet empirical evidence contradicts theoretical prediction. Because you're thinking about it wrong, Dr. Park said, her scientific curiosity overriding diplomatic protocols. You approach adaptation as an optimization problem, find the perfect solution and implement it. But human adaptation is more like jazz improvisation. Each performance is unique, unrepeatable, and often better because it's imperfect. The 3 metamorphs fell silent, their forms becoming more still than Rodriguez had ever seen. Then, Echo of Change began to shift, its angular features softening, its silver skin taking on colors that hadn't been there before, subtle blues and golds that seemed to emerge from within. Demonstrate this jazz improvisation, it requested. Rodriguez looked at his team, saw understanding pass between them without words. Ghost began to hum, not the same song from Colony Prime, but something new, improvised on the spot. Kowalski tapped a rhythm against his rifle stock, the sound echoing through the cargo bay. Dr. Park contributed electronic beeps from her scanners, creating harmony from technology never designed for music. Rodriguez added his own voice, not singing, but reciting poetry that emerged from memory and imagination combined. We are the music makers, and we are the dreamers of dreams, wandering by lone sea breakers and sitting by desolate streams. The metamorphs' forms began to resonate, their surfaces rippling in patterns that matched the impromptu performance. But something was different. Instead of copying the humans' actions, they were creating their own variations, their own interpretations, their own contributions to the emerging symphony. This is unprecedented, Fluxseeker Prime whispered, its voice harmonizing with itself in frequencies that had never existed before. We are not replicating your behavior. We are collaborating with it. That's the difference, Rodriguez said as the music faded into respectful silence. Replication creates copies. Collaboration creates something new. Ripplethought's form had become more complex, fractal patterns emerging and disappearing across its surface like thoughts made visible. We have spent eons perfecting the art of becoming other beings, but we have never learned the art of becoming ourselves while working with others. It's harder, Ghost admitted. Collaboration requires trust, vulnerability, the willingness to be changed by the encounter, but the results. She gestured to the space around them, two species that should have been mortal enemies, creating something beautiful together in the darkness between stars. Echo of Change moved closer, its form stabilizing into something that was unmistakably its own, neither human nor the shapeless silver of traditional metamorph appearance, but something new. We request permission to study your methods, not to replace your species, but to learn your approach to adaptation. Cultural exchange, Dr. Park breathed. They want to learn how to be themselves while still being adaptable. Rodriguez felt the weight of species survival settling on his shoulders, not just human survival, but the possibility of something unprecedented in galactic history, genuine cooperation between radically different forms of life. We accept, he said formally, but the exchange goes both ways. Your ability to adapt, to see the universe from countless perspectives. Humanity could learn from that too. Fluxseeker Prime's form rippled with what could only be joy. Agreement achieved. We propose establishment of joint research stations, cultural exchange programs, cooperative exploration of adaptation methodologies. And the conquered worlds. Admiral Kim's voice carried across the comm from the Phantom's bridge, concern evident despite the diplomatic formality. The three metamorphs exchanged complex patterns of color and movement, their version of private conversation. Then Fluxseeker Prime spoke with something that might have been shame. Those populations were terminated during integration processes. We cannot restore what has been absorbed, but we can ensure such methods are never employed again. 47 civilizations, Rodriguez said quietly. Billions of lives. How do we move forward from that? By ensuring it never happens again, Echo of Change replied, its form becoming more solid, more committed. By proving that cooperation creates superior results to conquest, by becoming something better than what we were. Rodriguez nodded slowly, understanding the weight of the choice before them. They could demand justice for the murdered worlds, and probably get it, given humanity's proven ability to combat metamorphs. They could insist on reparations, territory submission. Or they could choose something harder, the path of genuine transformation for both species. We'll need safeguards, he said finally. Protocols, oversight, verification methods, trust but verify. Agreed, Ripplethought said immediately. We propose exchange of permanent observers, your people among ours, our people among yours, not to spy but to learn. And if some of your people refuse to accept the new methods, Ghost asked, her intelligence officer's mind already calculating potential problems. If they prefer conquest to cooperation. The three metamorphs' forms grew still, patterns of communication passing between them in colors too subtle for human eyes to follow. Then Fluxseeker Prime spoke with harmonic resonance that suggested absolute commitment. Then they will discover that we, too, can be unpredictable when necessary. Evolution requires adaptation or extinction. We choose adaptation. Rodriguez extended his hand carefully, slowly, with full awareness of the risk. Partners. Fluxseeker Prime flowed forward, its form solidifying into something resembling a human hand without losing its essential alienness. The contact sent electricity through Rodriguez's nervous system, not painful but overwhelming. For a moment, he experienced existence from a metamorph perspective. The constant flux of form, the hunger for new experiences, the loneliness of being able to become anyone while never quite being yourself. But he also felt something new curiosity about what it might be like to maintain consistent identity while still growing and changing. The metamorph was learning from him even as he learned from it. Partners, Flux Seeker Prime agreed, its voice carrying harmonics of hope that transcended species barriers. Around them, the cargo bay filled with the sound of possibility, two species taking their first tentative steps towards something unprecedented in galactic history. Not conquest or submission, but genuine synthesis. The age of perfect predators was ending. The era of imperfect cooperation had begun. And in the vast darkness between stars, that made all the difference. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story, consider subscribing for more journeys. Share your thoughts in the comments and stay tuned for the next adventure.